Well, from short people to shredders, I think it's going to be a hard act to follow. But Gwen Coleman said it perfectly. We value what we measure, and guess what we don't measure? We don't measure our environmental impact. You can look at what we ate today, this room, your office, your house. We just don't measure it. The problem, though, in the environmental space is that even if you measure it, sometimes it's hard to understand. I'll tell you, the building you're in produces over 8,000 tons of carbon a year. So what? So let's answer the question, how big is carbon? Well, that's a kilogram of carbon. That's how big it would be, this big box. And guess what? That's one hamburger. So when you next eat a hamburger, think of that. It's also, if you look at the number of hamburgers we eat in one day in the US, could take that to the moon and back five times. So it's big. One little textbook, one little notebook is a kilogram of carbon. If you do 140 searches on the internet, that's a kilogram. And you know, if you drive this thing 2 kilometers, it's a kilogram. Or drink 6 Cokes. You know, leaving the lights on in your classroom for an extra hour is a kilogram. And the average person, and we're not average in this room, it's kind of, we travel a lot more than normal. You could get this taller than the CN Tower in 10 days. That's how much carbon you produce. So one of the most interesting facts to me is that there are going to be more children graduating in the next 20 to 30 years than in all of history. That's an amazing fact. Just in the next 20 to 30 years, more children will have graduated than in all of history. And what can we do about that? Well, we can start focusing on the people who influence us, the kids. Kids are powerful. And in Canada alone, we have 8 million kids. And guess what? If they lost 1 kilogram a day of carbon, which is not a lot, that's 1 hamburger less, that's a lot of carbon. So as you can see it. So let's start making it visible. What you've got here is actually a 10-gram box of carbon. There are 100 of those in one of these. And every minute, you produce that much if you're a Canadian. But guess what? If you were born in Sweden, you'd be producing that much. Now, how does that happen? Well, that's a good question. I hope you go home and answer it, because that's part of our problem. We actually produce a lot. But imagine we start visualizing it. And we can actually see how we rank, me versus you. And we can see it in a very simple way, like this graph might show. Or that's my school, and there's your school, the big bubble. And the size of the bubble is the footprint of that school. Or that's me in blue, and that's the 20 other schools in my neighborhood. So we have taken this, and the idea is to take this kind of information and close the loop with challenges. As we saw, challenges really make a huge difference. So challenging friends, school, and government to actually reduce carbon, but actually giving it a size. And then learning by discovery exactly what we're doing that is equivalent to that. So on top of this box, we have something like, you know, leaving your classroom lights. We talked about 80 sheets of paper, boiling your kettle 20 times, and so on. So attacking climate change with children will be the most cost-effective way to go. Just forget the adults. Thank you.